Hey, what's going on, everyone? It's your friend Bats. My name is Jared, and this is my second attempt of recording this because when I hit stop record, I didn't push accept, I hit cancel. And so we're doing this again. So this is a video where I want to talk about why I love Batman. Batman has been in my life for as long as I can remember. There is not a part of my life where Batman has not been in it. And I'm about to be 40 this year, which is kind of crazy to think, but we all age. And my oldest memory is me almost 4 years old. I was born in 1985 in July, so I was almost 4 at this time. So I remember my mom took me to go see Batman in 1989, and I know the movie came out in June. So I'm almost 4, and I'm standing in line with my mom to get concessions. And in front of us was this 20-year-old, this guy, probably my mom's age at the time. And I remember looking up at him, and in the back of his head, he had a shaved bat symbol. And in my almost 4-year-old brain, I'm like, that is the coolest thing ever. That's who I'm going to be when I grow up. And I kind of did. I never had the bat symbol shaved in the back of my head, but I still have time to do that, which I'll probably have to console with my fiance about. I'll probably get that look in us men who have ladies know what we're talking about. Like, you're serious? And so, Batman has always been there for me. And I mean that in almost a, if we want to psychoanalyze, I mean that he's always been there for me. And that's because I kind of grew up with a absent father who kind of came around later when he was, kind of forced to, so I asked my grandmother before she died when I was 18, I said, hey, how did I become obsessed with Batman? Because I don't remember it. I just know that he's just always been here. He's just always been there as long as I can remember. And she said that the earliest memory that she has with me with Batman is when I was 3 years old and I was in the hospital recovering from my second heart surgery. Her and I were in the room watching television. She said we were watching Sesame Street, and I grabbed the television remote and started flicking through the channels. And she's like, "Put it back on Sesame Street." And I'm clicking through, and I saw the '60s Batman TV show, and I stopped there, and I just became enthralled by it. And she's like, "Hey, put it back on Sesame Street." And I was like, "No, not doing that, no." And so I guess when you're a granny and your toddler grandson who just had heart surgery and you're not sure whether he's going to make it or not wants to watch something else, I guess you're not really going to tell him no. And so praise the Lord that she's just went along with it, because it became a lifelong obsession. And so, like I said, I was born in 85, and I was kind of primed for that resurgence of the Batmania. So by the time I was 4, we had the new Batman movie, and then that just, I felt like, maybe because, when you're a kid, time just feels so much longer, but I feel like the 89 Batman movie was just so big. It was big all the way to 1992, 3 years later. And then Batman Returns was so big as well, as all the way into another 3 years to 1995. And I felt like those original first 3 Batman movies were just massive things in time. And they after they were out of theaters, they transcended into VHS, and just all us kids had it on video and we all watched it over and over again. We all watched the Batman animated series in 1992 all the way up until 1997 or 8 when I think it was 98 when they stopped making episodes. But when I was almost 10, I was with my dad on a weekend visitation, and we went to Santa Monica 3rd Street Promenade, and we went into this used record store, and I found some comics, and I was flipping through them, and I found a Batman. I was like, oh, sweet. And I think it was Batman number 81, if I'm correct. It's basically, it has Two-Face with Batman and Robin tied up on a giant coin, and Two-Face is pulling a lever that's catapulting Batman and Robin on this giant coin, doing a flip into some spikes. And I just thought that was the coolest thing ever. And it was right before Batman Forever was coming out, so I was like, oh, I want to read comics. And basically from there, I've read comics. And so it's been 30 years, right? And I guess in June or so, maybe May, because I wasn't 10 yet, and Batman Forever hadn't come out yet. And I think Batman Forever came out in June of 95, if I'm correct. So it'd be May, and we're in May now. So it's literally been 30 years since I've been collecting and reading Batman comics. And I remember reading this Batman comic back home at my mom. It was actually my grandma's house. And my mom, because my mom lived out of town and my grandmother lived down the street from my dad's house. And so sometimes my dad would drop me off at my grandmother's house and my mom would pick me up from my grandmother's house. And so I remember it was in that my mom was there and I was reading my comic book, and my mom made a comment of like, why are you reading comic books? Like, you should be reading real books. And I remember my grandmother saying, but he's reading something. And so just let him read it. And she goes, all right. And ever since then, I think we've made progress, my mom and I, because 30 years later, she wants to take me to the comic shop. She's like, oh, you want to go? Yeah, we can go. We can stop. Because I'm like, I'll be with her on a not visitation. I'm visiting my mom. She lives in Washington now. And then I'll be like driving around with her and I'll be on Google Maps. I'm like, hey, there's a comic book shop like 3 miles from here. Could we go? She's like, yeah, we can. And so it's silly, but Batman has just always been in my life. As you've seen through this video, there's like a lot of my shirts, a lot of old photos of me. There's something Batman in the background, like on the walls, or my clothing. Just, I was probably always talking about it back then as I am nowadays. And, this is really crazy. The universe that God has created has really made it crazy for me to have this coincidence. When I was in high school, I met a guy named Alfred. And Alfred turned out to be a crazy person. So I stopped talking to Alfred. But Alfred introduced me to one of his friends whose name is Bruce. And now, 20 years later, Bruce and I are still best friends. Bruce will be the best man at my upcoming wedding. And I've talked about him plenty of times. And so, even, it's kind of crazy. To me, it's crazy. My best friend's name is Bruce. And I was introduced by him by a guy named Alfred. It's crazy. And so, there's always been some kind of Batman presence in my life. And I feel like once I got into comics, I really loved Batman. I loved him as a kid, as a cartoon and a movie, because he's just a striking image. He's just cool. He's just cool. But I feel like when I got into comic books and I started reading the history of the character in different stories and learning who he was and how he became this person and what kind of characteristics, what makes him tick. And when you really get into that really like stuff that you could only get in comic books, I just became way more fascinated with him. To this day where I'm like, they still haven't done him right in the movies. They still haven't done a Batman movie that I would want to see. But maybe one day. Please, James Gunn, make it happen. And I'm just, yeah, I have Batman tattooed on me. It's a problem, but I love it. And why I love Batman is just because he's always been there for me. You know, like I said, I had an absentee father, and Batman was some kind of good in this like childhood development. And now I'm adult, and he's still good to me. It's so stupid. Like, there's times where I've had rocky times with Batman, you know, specifically the Tom King era, but he still comes around and makes me happy. There's always new, whether it's old, it's still new to me. There's still always new Batman stuff to consume. And it makes me happy. I just love enjoying Batman. And I know I meet some adults and they're like, you really like Batman that much? And I'm like, yeah. And I feel like the world's starting to change. But to me, it's always been like, some guys like sports. Some guys like cars. Some guys like fishing and hunting, or a combination of all of those things. I love Batman and comics and cartoons and those things. And I feel like people are starting to come around to it. They're starting to understand it a little more, but it's still a little odd. But I don't care. I've always been a little odd. And I just love Batman. He's impacted my life in so many ways. And I'd love to hear how Batman impacted your life and why do you love him? And if you have anything in that vein, let me know down below in the comments. And thanks for watching, listening, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace.